I texted the family group chat. My graduation's on Saturday. Hope you can make it. After 6 years of night classes, student loans, and sacrifices, those 11 words represented everything. My sister Jessica replied, "We'll be in Hawaii, maybe next time." My mom added, "Don't make this about you." I simply wrote, "Understood." My fingers trembled as I set down my phone. 28 years of being the invisible middle child culminated in this moment. My master's degree suddenly felt hollow despite representing my escape from crushing debt and years of sacrifice. The text messages glowed on my screen long after I should have closed the chat. 6 years of working full-time at the city planning office while taking night classes had finally paid off. My master's degree in emergency management and disaster response represented more than just an academic achievement. It was my chance to make a difference in the world, to help people when they needed it most. "Alberta, are you sure you don't want me to say something to them?" Madison asked, peering over my shoulder at the family chat. My best friend since undergrad, Madison had witnessed every sacrifice I'd made for this degree. The weekends spent studying instead of dating. The vacations foregone to pay for textbooks. The countless nights I'd fallen asleep at my desk surrounded by disaster simulation models. What would be the point? I sighed, setting my phone face down on the coffee table. It's always been this way. Madison plopped onto my worn secondhand couch, sending a stack of emergency response journals tumbling to the floor. "Because you're about to get a freaking master's degree. Because normal families show up for that kind of thing." I smiled weakly. Not mine, not for me anyway. Jessica had always been the golden child. Firstborn, beauty queen, tennis champion, and social butterfly. Every achievement earned lavish celebration. When she graduated college 4 years ago, my parents rented out an entire restaurant. When she got her first job at a marketing firm, they bought her a car. When her marriage to Brad fell apart 6 months ago, they converted their basement into a luxury apartment so she could find herself rent-free. Then there was Taylor, the baby of the family. 3 years my junior, he'd bounced between majors before dropping out of college altogether to start a social media management company. Every new venture was revolutionary, according to my parents, who happily invested in each idea. His current business was actually showing promise, which only reinforced their belief that supporting his spontaneous dreams was the right choice. And then there was me, the middle child, the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who'd paid her own way through undergrad with scholarships and part-time jobs, the one who'd spent 6 years pursuing a master's degree one evening class at a time. "What time did you tell your parents to be at the ceremony on Saturday?" Madison asked, picking up the fallen journals. 4 o'clock. "And when did they book this Hawaii trip?" I hesitated. "I'm not sure. Jessica's been talking about needing a vacation since her divorce." That wasn't entirely true. Last weekend, I'd gone to my parents' house to help them troubleshoot their computer. While fixing their email, I'd spotted the confirmation for the Hawaii trip. The booking date was 3 days after I'd announced my graduation date in the family chat last month. They had deliberately scheduled a vacation during my ceremony. "You should confront them," Madison said. "And say what? Why don't you love me as much as Jessica and Taylor?" I shook my head. "I'd rather preserve my dignity." My phone chimed with a new email notification. I expected it to be from Dr. Winters, my thesis advisor, with final feedback on my presentation. Instead, it was from the department secretary confirming that I would be giving the valedictorian address at Saturday's ceremony. "What's that?" Madison asked, noticing my expression. "I'm valedictorian," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "They want me to give a speech." Madison squealed and jumped up to hug me. "Alberta! That's incredible!" "No one's going to be there to hear it," I said, the accomplishment already tasting bitter. "I'll be there," Madison said firmly. "Front row," embarrassingly loud. The next day, Dr. Winters noticed my subdued mood during our final thesis review. "Alberta, your evacuation protocol model for volcanic eruptions is revolutionary. The way you've integrated real-time seismic data with transportation infrastructure analysis could save thousands of lives. You should be celebrating." "I am," I said unconvincingly. Dr. Winters removed her glasses, setting them beside my thesis draft. "Is everything okay? You've seemed distracted these past few days." I considered brushing off her concern, but found myself confessing. "My family won't be at graduation. They're going to Hawaii instead." Dr. Winter's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear that. Family can be complicated. It's fine, I said automatically. I'm used to it. Well, the entire faculty will be there cheering for you. Your work has impressed everyone in the department. I smiled gratefully, though the ache remained. I had spent years specializing in predicting and managing natural disasters, but the emotional disaster of my family dynamics remained beyond my control. That evening, I was finalizing my presentation slides when my office phone rang. The display showed an unfamiliar Washington, D.C. area code. Alberta Walker speaking. Miss Walker, this is Patrick Harris, Deputy Director of Emergency Response at FEMA. Dr. Winters shared your thesis paper with me. My heart skipped. Patrick Harris was legendary in emergency management circles. His innovative approaches during Hurricane Maria had revolutionized disaster response protocols. It's an honor, sir. I hope you found it interesting. Interesting doesn't begin to cover it. Your volcanic eruption prediction model is exactly what we've been looking for. I'd like to offer you a position on our assessment team. I nearly dropped the phone. Thank you. When would you want me to start? We have a team leaving for Hawaii the day after your graduation to assess volcanic activity on Kilauea. Dr. Winters mentioned your graduation is this Saturday? Yes, that's right. Perfect timing then. We'll fly you out Sunday morning. This is just preliminary monitoring, but your predictive models could be game-changing for our approach. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. Hawaii, the very place my family had chosen over my graduation, would now be the launching pad for my career. The irony wasn't lost on me. For the first time in my life, being overlooked had led to something extraordinary. The news of the FEMA opportunity should have lifted my spirits, but as I sat alone in the university library surrounded by my research materials, I couldn't shake the hollow feeling in my chest. My laptop displayed the final revisions of my thesis presentation on innovative evacuation protocols for volcanic events. The colorful simulation models showed potential lava flow paths and evacuation routes for Hawaii's Big Island communities. Hawaii, the place my family had deemed more important than witnessing the culmination of my 6-year journey. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Dinner tonight? We should celebrate that FEMA offer. I responded with a quick cant. Final presentation prep. Tomorrow, maybe? The truth was, I didn't feel like celebrating. Instead, I threw myself deeper into work, triple-checking every data point and refining my evacuation models. My thesis focused specifically on Kilauea volcano on Hawaii's Big Island, ironically the very area my family would be visiting. I had chosen Kilauea because of its unique characteristics and the wealth of monitoring data available. The volcano had a history of activity but with sufficient warning signs that, if properly interpreted, could save countless lives during an eruption. I pulled up the most recent seismic data from the USGS monitoring stations near Kilauea, something I'd been tracking daily for my research. The pattern of micro-earthquakes showed a slight increase over the past week. Nothing concerning to the casual observer, but to my trained eye, it matched the early stages of the pattern I'd identified in my research as potentially preceding a significant event. My phone rang, startling me from my analysis. It was my father. Alberta? Your mother wanted me to check if you're still planning to come to Sunday dinner next week. His voice had the same distracted quality it always had when speaking to me, like he was simultaneously watching television or reading the newspaper. I won't be able to make it, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. I'm leaving for Hawaii Sunday morning. Hawaii? What are you talking about? I've been offered a position with FEMA's volcanic assessment team. We're flying out the day after graduation. There was a pause. That's great, honey. We'll be in Hawaii, too. Maybe we'll see you there. Maybe, I said, though we both knew it was unlikely. The Big Island was large, and they'd be at a resort while I'd be working with the assessment team. Dad, about graduation. He cleared his throat. Jessica really needed this trip, Alberta. After everything with Brad, she's been so depressed. This vacation has been all she could talk about for weeks. I bit back the retort that Jessica had been talking about Hawaii only after I'd announced my graduation date. I understand. You always do, he said, relief evident in his voice. You're the easy one, always have been. The easy one, not the accomplished one or the impressive one. just the one who didn't make waves. The one who understood when family priorities didn't include her. "I have to go, Dad. I have work to finish." After hanging up, I stared at my screen, at the swirling patterns of my lava flow simulation. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd spent years learning how to predict and manage natural disasters, yet remained helpless against the emotional tsunami of my family's indifference. The next evening, I found myself alone in an empty classroom, practicing my presentation. My voice echoed off the bare walls as I explained how my evacuation model could reduce casualties by up to 70% during a major volcanic event. That was impressive. I jumped at the voice, turning to find Dr. Winters standing in the doorway. "Sorry to startle you," she said, walking toward me. "I was working late and heard you practicing." "Just making sure I'm prepared for tomorrow's faculty presentation," I said. "Your work is groundbreaking, Alberta. Patrick Harris doesn't recruit just anyone for his team." I nodded, saving my presentation and closing my laptop. "I still can't believe it." "Believe it," Dr. Winters said firmly. "You've earned this opportunity through years of dedicated work." As I packed up my materials, Dr. Winters added, "The department is planning a small reception after the graduation ceremony. Several faculty members specifically asked if you'd be there." "I'll be there," I promised, knowing at least some people would be celebrating my achievement. The morning before my final presentation, Madison dragged me shopping for a graduation outfit. "You can't wear your usual emergency management khakis under your gown," she insisted, pulling me into a boutique I normally would walk past. "This is your moment to shine, whether your family is there or not." I reluctantly tried on the blue dress she selected, surprised by how the color brought out my eyes and complemented my dark blonde hair. "You look amazing," Madison said. "FEMA guy won't know what hit him." I rolled my eyes but bought the dress anyway. Even if my family wouldn't see it, I would know I looked my best while accepting my diploma. That afternoon, while making final revisions to my presentation, I checked the Kilauea monitoring data again out of habit. The micro-earthquake pattern had intensified slightly, and gas emissions had increased at one of the vents. To most people, these changes would seem insignificant, but according to my model, they represented early warning signs. I sent a quick email to Patrick Harris with my observations, not expecting an immediate response. To my surprise, he called within the hour. "Alberta, your email was timely. We've been watching those same indicators. That's why we moved up the assessment trip." "Is there cause for concern?" I asked, thinking of my family. "Nothing imminent according to standard models. But your predictive model suggests we should be watching more closely, which is exactly why I want you on the team." After the call, I considered texting my family about the subtle changes in volcanic activity, but decided against it. The standard models showed no immediate threat, and I didn't want to seem like I was creating drama to get attention. Besides, they probably wouldn't take my warning seriously anyway. Instead, I focused on finalizing my presentation, which I would deliver to the faculty review committee the next morning. As I worked, I couldn't help running additional simulations based on the latest data. According to my model, if the current trend continued, there could be significant activity within the next 72 hours. As I stared at the projection, I fought down a wave of anxiety. My family would be in Hawaii tomorrow. I would be there the day after. And according to my model, Kilauea was showing the early signs of what could become a dangerous eruption. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect day for graduation. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, carefully applying makeup and styling my hair. The blue dress hung on the back of the door, waiting. My valedictorian speech sat on the counter, the pages slightly wrinkled from countless revisions. My phone buzzed with congratulatory texts from Madison and Dr. Winters, but nothing from my family. I hadn't really expected anything, yet the silence still stung. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock, but valedictorians needed to arrive early for final instructions. I gathered my things, took one last look at my apartment, and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, my phone chimed with a text. My heart jumped, hoping it was from my parents or siblings. Instead, it was from Patrick Harris. "Congratulations on your big day. Looking forward to having you on the team tomorrow." I smiled, grateful for the acknowledgement, and headed to campus. The university auditorium bustled with excited graduates and proud families. I weaved through the crowd toward the staging area, trying not to notice how every other graduate seemed to have a entourage of supporters. Parents carrying flower bouquets, siblings with congratulatory balloons, grandparents dabbing proud tears. Alberta. Madison rushed toward me, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. "You look amazing. That dress is perfect." "Thanks for coming," I said, hugging her tightly. "Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss it." She handed me the flowers. "I got here early to save seats." "Seats? It's just you, right? And Dr. Winters. And Patrick Harris." "What? Patrick is here?" Madison grinned. "He flew in this morning for the ceremony. Said he wanted to support FEMA's newest team member." Warmth spread through my chest. People had shown up for me after all, even if they weren't family. The ceremony proceeded with the typical pomp and circumstance. I sat with the other graduates, occasionally glancing at the audience. Madison had secured seats in the third row, center section. She sat beside Dr. Winters and a distinguished-looking man I assumed was Patrick Harris. 3 seats for 3 people who believed in me. I tried not to look at the empty seats Madison had optimistically reserved for my family. When my name was called, Madison cheered so loudly that several people turned to look. Dr. Winters and Patrick stood, applauding as I crossed the stage to receive my diploma. In that moment, with their support radiating toward me, I found I could smile genuinely as I shook the dean's hand. "And now," the dean announced, "I invite our department valedictorian, Alberta Walker, to deliver the graduation address." I approached the podium, my speech clutched in slightly trembling hands. Looking out over the audience, I spotted Madison giving me an encouraging thumbs up. "6 years ago," I began, "I started this program with a simple goal: to learn how to help people during their worst moments. Emergency management isn't about preventing disasters. It's about understanding that when disaster strikes, people need more than sympathy. They need systems that work. They need preparation that anticipates chaos. They need someone who has thought about the unthinkable before it happens." As I spoke, my confidence grew. This was my element. This was what I had trained for. I may have been invisible to my family, but here, speaking about my passion, I was seen. "We don't choose when disasters happen," I continued, "but we can choose how we respond to them. And sometimes the most important response isn't the immediate rescue, but the quiet work done years before that makes that rescue possible." From the corner of my eye, I noticed a local news crew filming from the back of the auditorium. The university often invited media to cover graduation ceremonies, but I hadn't expected to be on camera. Today, as we graduate, we carry with us not just knowledge but responsibility. The responsibility to use what we've learned to make a difference, whether anyone notices or not. Because true impact isn't measured in recognition, but in lives improved and suffering prevented. As I concluded my speech to enthusiastic applause, I couldn't help but think how those words applied to my own life. I had spent years working in the shadows, my achievements unmarked by family celebrations. But today, surrounded by people who recognized my value, I finally felt visible. After the ceremony, the department hosted a small reception. Several professors congratulated me on both my speech and my thesis research. A reporter from the local news station asked for an interview about my innovative disaster response techniques. "Your evacuation models for volcanic events are fascinating," the reporter said. "What inspired your focus on Kilauea specifically?" I explained the unique characteristics that made the volcano both dangerous and predictable with the right monitoring systems. The interview lasted only a few minutes, but it felt significant to have my work acknowledged publicly. As the reception continued, my phone vibrated in my purse, a text from my younger brother, Taylor. "Congrats, sis. Sorry we couldn't make it." At least it was something, I thought. Though it arrived 3 hours after the ceremony had started, I slipped my phone back into my purse without replying. Patrick Harris found me by the refreshment table. "Impressive speech, Alberta, and even more impressive research. Your predictive model could revolutionize how we approach volcanic evacuations." "Thank you for coming today," I said. "It means a lot." "About tomorrow's flight," he said, lowering his voice. "There's been a change of plans. We need to move up the departure. How soon can you be ready to leave?" I blinked in surprise. "Tonight? but the flight isn't until tomorrow morning. Patrick pulled out his phone, showing me a seismic reading. These came in during the ceremony. The activity has intensified substantially in the past 6 hours. I studied the readings, a chill running down my spine. The pattern matched exactly what my predictive model had identified as a precursor to a significant event. This is following the exact progression I outlined in my thesis, which is why we need you in Hawaii tonight. I've arranged for a FEMA charter flight leaving at midnight. Can you be ready? I thought of my packed suitcase at home, prepared for tomorrow's journey. Yes, I can be ready. Good. I'll text you the details. He squeezed my shoulder. Congratulations again on your graduation. Now let's go put that education to work. As the reception wound down, I pulled Madison aside to explain the change of plans. They're sending you tonight? Talk about jumping straight from graduation to real world, she said, helping me gather my things. Have you told your family you'll be in Hawaii? I shook my head. They're probably still in the air. I'll text them when I land. What I didn't say was how surreal it felt that I would be rushing to Hawaii on an emergency assessment mission while my family lounged at a resort, oblivious to both my achievement and the potential danger brewing beneath the island's surface. As I left the reception, my monitoring app chimed with another alert. The seismic activity near Kilauea had increased again. According to my model, this progression suggested something significant was building. I just hoped we would arrive in time to properly assess the situation and implement precautionary measures if needed. In the taxi heading home to grab my suitcase, I stared out the window at the passing city lights. 6 years of study had prepared me for exactly this moment. I was graduating straight into a real-world application of everything I'd learned. And somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, my family was flying toward the very volcano I had been studying, completely unaware that their overlooked middle child would soon be racing to the same destination for entirely different reasons. The FEMA charter flight touched down in Honolulu just after 5 a.m, local time. Despite having slept little on the overnight flight, adrenaline kept me alert as our team transferred to a smaller aircraft bound for Hilo on the Big Island. Patrick Harris sat beside me, reviewing the latest monitoring data on his tablet. The USGS team is expecting us, he said. They've set up additional monitoring equipment near the summit and along the Eastern Rift Zone based on your recommendations. I nodded, scrolling through the most recent readings on my own device. The seismic pattern had continued to develop overnight, with more frequent micro-earthquakes concentrated in the area my model had identified as concerning. Gas emissions had also increased substantially at several vents. These readings match the precursor pattern I identified in my thesis, I said, trying to keep the worry from my voice. If the progression continues, we could be looking at a significant event within the next 24 to 36 hours. Patrick frowned. The standard models still show minimal concern. Your model is the only one predicting potential activity this severe. The standard models don't integrate the gas emission patterns with the micro-earthquake frequencies in the same way, I explained. They treat them as separate indicators rather than as an interconnected system. Well, that's why you're here, Patrick said. Fresh perspectives save lives in this business. As our helicopter approached the Big Island, I gazed down at the lush green landscape intersected by black ribbons of old lava flows. Somewhere down there, my family would be checking into their resort, ready to begin their vacation. I had texted them after landing in Honolulu, a brief message explaining I was in Hawaii with FEMA to assess volcanic activity. So far, no one had responded. At the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park headquarters, we were greeted by the chief USGS volcanologist, Dr. Amanda Foster, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Welcome to Kilauea," she said, shaking our hands. "We've been reviewing your predictive model, Miss Walker. It's certainly innovative." I recognized the skepticism in her tone. My approach challenged conventional wisdom in volcanic monitoring. The integration of these particular indicators has shown strong predictive value in historical eruptions, I said firmly. Dr. Foster led us to the monitoring station, where wall-mounted screens displayed various data feeds from around the volcano. As you can see, there is increased activity, but nothing outside normal parameters for Kilauea, which has been in a state of ongoing eruption since 1983. But the pattern of activity has changed, I pointed out, stepping closer to one of the displays. The concentration of micro-earthquakes at this depth, combined with the increased gas emissions at these specific vents, suggests magma movement in the chamber that could lead to a new fissure opening. Several of the senior USGS scientists exchanged glances. One of them, a bearded man in his 50s, spoke up. "With all due respect, we've been monitoring this volcano for decades. The current activity is well within established safety parameters." Patrick stepped forward. "Dr. Reeves, this is why we brought Miss Walker in. Her model has identified patterns the standard approaches might miss. At minimum, it deserves consideration." I appreciated Patrick's support but could feel resistance from the room. To them, I was a newly graduated academic with an unproven theory, challenging years of established practice. "Perhaps we could run my simulation model with the current data," I suggested. "See what it predicts compared to the standard models." Dr. Foster hesitated, then nodded. "I don't see the harm in that. We can set you up in the side office." While the team discussed logistics, I discreetly checked my phone. There was a new Instagram post from Jessica, a selfie of her, my parents, and Taylor in front of their luxury resort, Royal Kona, with the caption, "Hawaii Adventures Begin, Family Vacation Paradise Found." The resort was located in an area that, according to my model, could be at risk if my predictions proved accurate. I swallowed hard, putting my phone away. I needed to focus on the data, not my family drama. For the next few hours, I worked with a USGS technician to input their current monitoring data into my simulation model. As the results began to take shape on the screen, my concern deepened. The model predicted a 70% probability of a significant fissure eruption within 24 hours, with magma breakthrough likely along the eastern rift zone, potentially reaching populated areas, including several resorts. I called Patrick and Dr. Foster into the office to review the results. "This is concerning," Dr. Foster admitted, studying the simulation. "But it contradicts all our standard predictive models." "Because it's weighing the relationship between these indicators differently," I explained. "The historical data shows that this particular pattern of progressive activity has preceded major events 86% of the time." Patrick studied the map overlay showing potential lava flow paths. Some of these areas are heavily populated, resorts, residential communities. "We can't order an evacuation based on one experimental model," Dr. Foster said firmly. "The governor would never approve it without stronger evidence." "What about a partial, precautionary evacuation of the highest risk zones?" I suggested. "Frame it as a drill if necessary." Dr. Foster shook her head. "The economic impact would be enormous. Tourism is Hawaii's lifeblood." "And if we're wrong, FEMA takes the blame for panicking people unnecessarily," Patrick added. "We need more evidence." I felt frustration building. This was exactly the scenario my thesis had addressed: the gap between early warning signs and the threshold for official action. By the time conventional models predicted danger, it was often too late for orderly evacuation. "Can we at least increase monitoring in these specific areas?" I asked, indicating the regions my model identified as highest risk. "And perhaps issue a general advisory for residents and tourists to familiarize themselves with evacuation routes?" Dr. Foster considered this. "That's reasonable. I'll authorize deployment of additional portable monitoring stations to these coordinates, and we can update the standard advisory level." It wasn't enough, but it was something. As the team mobilized to implement these modest measures, I tried calling my family. The call went straight to voicemail. I sent a text instead. "In Hawaii with FEMA. Monitoring volcanic activity. Please stay alert and be familiar with evacuation procedures at your resort. Just a precaution." The message showed as delivered, but not read. Later that afternoon, I accompanied a team to install additional monitoring equipment near the areas my model identified as concerning. As we worked, I felt a slight tremor beneath my feet. Nothing dramatic, just a gentle reminder of the dynamic forces at work beneath the island's surface. "Did you feel that?" I asked the technician working beside me. He nodded. "Minor tremor. We get them all the time." But this one fit perfectly into the pattern my model had predicted. Increasing frequency and slightly higher magnitude, right on schedule. By early evening, we had returned to the monitoring station for a team meeting to assess the day's findings. As the various specialists reported their observations, I noticed a pattern emerging. Each individual measurement remained within normal parameters when viewed in isolation, but together, they told a different story. I was preparing to point this out when a stronger tremor shook the building. Coffee mugs rattled on the table. A few people steadied themselves against their chairs. 4.2, someone announced, reading from their monitoring equipment, centered along the eastern rift. I pulled out my laptop, quickly inputting this new data point into my simulation model. The results made my blood run cold. The probability of a major event had jumped to 90%, with the time frame shortened to less than 24 hours. Dr. Foster, Patrick, you need to see this, I said, turning my laptop so they could view the screen. With this new data, the model is showing near certainty of a significant eruption within the next day, possibly within hours. Patrick studied the simulation with growing concern. Where's the highest risk zone? I pointed to the map. Here, along this section of the rift. If a fissure opens in this area, lava flows could reach populated areas within hours, including several resorts. The Royal Kona would be directly in the path. The mention of the resort sent a chill through me. That was where my family was staying. Dr. Foster frowned, still skeptical but visibly more concerned after feeling the tremor herself. We need to alert the Civil Defense Agency and the governor's office. I'm still not convinced an evacuation is necessary, but we should at least prepare for the possibility. As the team broke into action groups, coordinating their response, I pulled Patrick aside. My family is staying at the Royal Kona. I've tried to warn them, but they're not responding. Patrick's expression softened. Go. Take one of our vehicles. Check on them. Make sure they're aware of the situation. We'll handle things here for a few hours. Gratitude washed over me. Thank you. I'll be back as soon as possible. As I drove toward the resort, another tremor shook the island, stronger than the last. This wasn't just following my predicted pattern. It was accelerating beyond it. Something significant was building beneath Kilauea, and time was running out faster than even my model had anticipated. The drive to the Royal Kona Resort should have taken 40 minutes, but a minor landslide from the earlier tremor had partially blocked the coastal highway, stretching my journey to over an hour. By the time I pulled into the resort's circular driveway, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the immaculate tropical gardens. The contrast between the growing crisis at the monitoring station and the carefree vacation atmosphere was jarring. Hotel guests lounged by the infinity pool, tropical drinks in hand. A poolside band played gentle Hawaiian melodies. No one seemed aware of the potential danger brewing just miles away. At the reception desk, I flashed my FEMA credentials. I need to locate guests staying here. The Walker family checked in today. The receptionist's cheerful expression faltered slightly at the sight of my government ID. Let me check for you. She typed on her computer, then looked up. Yes, they're in Ocean View Suite 512. Thank you. And could you connect me to the hotel manager? It's regarding a potential emergency situation. While waiting for the manager, I tried calling my family again. This time, to my relief, my father answered. Alberta? What's going on? We got your texts about being in Hawaii. Dad, where are you right now? At the hotel. We just finished dinner and we're heading to the luau on the beach. What's this about volcano monitoring? I'm at your hotel. I need to speak with all of you. It's important. Can't it wait? The luau starts in 20 minutes, and Jessica's really looking forward to it. I close my eyes, fighting down frustration. No, Dad, it can't wait. I'm coming up to your room now. The hotel manager, a trim man in his 40s named Daniel Kealoha, arrived as I ended the call. I quickly explained the situation. We're monitoring increased activity at Kilauea. There's a possibility we may need to evacuate the coastal areas, including this resort, within the next 12 to 24 hours. Mr. Kealoha's professional demeanor didn't crack, but concern flashed in his eyes. We have emergency protocols in place, but we've never had to fully evacuate the property before. We have 400 guests currently. I understand. For now, we're just issuing an advisory, but I recommend reviewing your evacuation procedures with staff and ensuring your emergency communication systems are operational. He nodded. I'll assemble the department heads immediately. Should we inform the guests? I considered this carefully. Not yet. We don't want to cause unnecessary panic, but have your staff ready to move quickly if the order comes. After ensuring the hotel management would be prepared, I took the elevator to the 5th floor. The hallway was quiet, with only the distant sound of a television from one of the rooms breaking the silence. I knocked on suite 512, my heart pounding inexplicably. After a moment, the door swung open to reveal my mother, dressed in a flowery resort outfit, a lei around her neck. "Alberta? What are you doing here?" Her surprise seemed genuine, as if she'd forgotten about my texts entirely. "I told you, I'm here with FEMA. May I come in?" She stepped aside, and I entered the spacious suite. My father stood by the balcony doors, while Jessica lounged on one of the sofas, scrolling through her phone. Taylor emerged from one of the bedrooms, a look of confusion on his face. "Hey sis," he said, giving me a quick hug. "Congrats on graduating. Sorry we missed it." At least he remembered, I thought. "What's with the official outfit?" Jessica asked, eyeing my FEMA polo shirt and khaki pants. "Couldn't find time to change into vacation clothes?" "I'm not on vacation," I said evenly. "I'm working. There's increased volcanic activity at Kilauea, and FEMA sent a team to assess the situation." My father frowned. "The hotel said nothing about volcanic concerns when we checked in, because we're still in the assessment phase. But my predictive model is showing concerning patterns that could indicate a significant eruption within the next 12 to 24 hours. Jessica rolled her eyes. "So dramatic. Kilauea erupts all the time. It's been erupting for decades." "This is different," I insisted. "The pattern of seismic activity and gas emissions indicates potential for new fissures opening, possibly in this direction." "And they sent you to tell us this?" my mother asked, skeptically. "Couldn't they have sent someone more experienced?" The familiar sting of her dismissal burned, but I kept my professional demeanor. "I'm here because my graduate research specialized in Kilauea's eruption patterns. FEMA recruited me specifically because of my predictive model." "Your model?" Jessica laughed. "You mean your homework project?" "My thesis," I corrected, which identified warning signs that standard monitoring might miss. Signs we're seeing right now. My father looked uncomfortable but tried to play peacemaker. "That's great, Alberta. Very impressive. But we've paid a lot for this vacation, and the luau starts soon. Did you hear what I said? There's a serious possibility you may need to evacuate within hours." "If it was that serious, the hotel would tell everyone," my mother said dismissively. "Not just have you come warn your family. I've already spoken with hotel management. They're preparing, just in case. All I'm asking is that you stay alert, keep your phones on, and be ready to follow evacuation instructions if they come." Taylor, who had been quiet, finally spoke up. "I think we should listen to Alberta. She wouldn't be here if it wasn't important." I shot him a grateful look. Jessica stood up, straightening her flower print dress. "Well, I'm not missing the luau I've been looking forward to for weeks because of Alberta's science project. Coming, Mom and Dad?" My mother glanced between us, then reached for her purse. "We'll keep our phones on, Alberta, but Jessica is right. We came here for a vacation, and until we hear otherwise from the hotel, that's what we're going to enjoy." My father looked torn, but ultimately followed my mother and Jessica toward the door. "We'll be careful, honey. Text us if anything changes." Only Taylor hesitated. "I'll catch up with you guys," he told them. After they left, he turned to me. "What's really going on, Alberta?" I sat on the edge of the sofa, suddenly exhausted. Exactly what I said. The volcano is showing warning signs of a potentially dangerous eruption. My research identified a pattern that predicts eruptions before the standard monitoring systems recognize the danger. No one believed me until today's tremors. "And you came here straight from graduation?" Taylor asked. I nodded. "They moved up the assessment trip because of the data. I flew out last night." Taylor sat beside me. "I'm sorry we missed your graduation. I wanted to be there, but Jessica needed a vacation after her divorce. I finished for him." "I know," Dad told me. "It's not right," Taylor said quietly. "The way they prioritize her." I shrugged, the familiar pain dulled by years of acceptance. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is making sure everyone stays safe." My phone buzzed with a text from Patrick. "New tremor, 5.1. Eastern rift showing significant deformation. Return to base as soon as possible." I stood quickly. "I have to get back to the monitoring station. New data coming in." "Is it bad?" Taylor asked. "Potentially. Look, Will you please try to convince the others to take this seriously? Stay close to the hotel, keep your phones on, and be packed and ready to move if the evacuation order comes. Taylor nodded. I'll try. And Alberta? I really am sorry about graduation. I gave him a quick hug. Thanks, that means a lot. As I drove back to the monitoring station, I could see a faint reddish glow in the night sky above Kilauea's summit. The volcano was making itself known, just as my model had predicted. I only hoped we'd have enough time to get everyone to safety when the main event began. Back at the monitoring center, the atmosphere had shifted from skeptical caution to focused urgency. The latest tremor had changed minds, and Dr. Foster was now coordinating with civil defense officials. Alberta, good timing, Patrick called as I entered. We need to run your model with the newest data. I quickly set up my laptop, inputting the latest readings. The results confirmed my worst fears. The probability of a major fissure eruption had reached 98%, with the time frame shortened to just 6 to 12 hours. We need to order an evacuation of the coastal areas now, I said, showing Patrick and Dr. Foster the simulation. If we wait for more evidence, it could be too late for an orderly evacuation. Dr. Foster studied the projections, her earlier skepticism gone. I'll contact the governor's office and recommend immediate evacuation of zones 1 through 3. She pointed to the map overlay. That includes all the resorts in this area. What about the areas here? I asked, indicating a region slightly inland that included several residential communities. We'll issue a standby alert, Dr. Foster said. They should be prepared to evacuate but can wait for confirmation of the eruption's direction. It wasn't ideal, but it was a major step forward. As the team mobilized to implement the partial evacuation order, I felt a measure of relief that at least my family's resort would be evacuated soon. That relief was short-lived. Just as the first evacuation notices were being transmitted to the affected areas, a series of sharp tremors shook the building. Outside, a loud rumbling sound rolled across the landscape. "New fissure opening!" someone shouted, pointing to one of the monitoring screens. "Eastern Rift, Sector 7." My heart sank. Sector 7 was precisely where my model had predicted the breakthrough would occur, and it was opening now, hours ahead of even my accelerated timeline. Dr. Foster rushed to the communications station. "Upgrade to full evacuation, all zones 1 through 5, immediate." I pulled up my flow projection model, adjusting for the new fissure location. What I saw sent a chill through me. The lava flow would follow a natural channel that led directly toward the coastal resort area, potentially reaching it within 2 hours. "Patrick, look at this," I said, my voice tight. "The flow path is heading straight for the Royal Kona and surrounding areas." He studied the projection grimly. "That's not much time for evacuation. And with that new fissure cutting across Highway 19, I realized what he was saying. The main evacuation route from the coastal resorts would soon be blocked by lava. There were alternative routes, but they would quickly become congested with the full evacuation now underway. "I need to make sure my family gets out," I said, reaching for my phone. "All civilian cell networks are jammed," one of the technicians reported. "Everyone's trying to call at once." Patrick placed a hand on my shoulder. "Go. Take the emergency channel radio. We can manage here." I hesitated, torn between my professional duty and personal concern. "I can't just leave." "Your family is in the highest risk zone, and you know exactly what's coming," Patrick said firmly. "Go help them and anyone else you can. That's what emergency management is about." With a grateful nod, I grabbed my go bag and a radio, heading for the door. Behind me, the monitoring center was a flurry of activity as the team worked to coordinate the massive evacuation effort. As I stepped outside, the night sky was lit with an ominous orange glow. In the distance, a fountain of lava shot into the air from the new fissure, visible even from miles away. The volcano had awakened, just as I had predicted. Now the race was on to get people to safety before the flowing lava cut off escape routes. I jumped into a FEMA vehicle and sped toward the coast, praying I wouldn't be too late. The road was already filling with cars heading in the opposite direction, the evacuation beginning to take effect. But I knew from my models that time was critically short, especially for those closest to the projected flow path, including my family at the Royal Kona Resort. The drive back to the Royal Kona was a nightmare of gridlocked roads and panicked tourists. What should have been a 40-minute journey stretched to nearly 90 minutes as I navigated around traffic jams, using my FEMA credentials to access emergency lanes when possible. Through my open window, I could hear the distant rumble of the eruption and occasional emergency sirens. My FEMA radio crackled with updates, none of them good. The fissure had widened, and lava output had exceeded even the worst-case projections. The main flow was moving faster than anticipated, already cutting across secondary evacuation routes. I tried repeatedly to reach my family by phone, but all circuits remained busy. When I finally arrived at the resort, the scene was one of controlled chaos. Hotel staff wearing emergency vests were directing guests onto buses, while police officers managed traffic. Flashing emergency lights painted the tropical paradise in surreal reds and blues. I parked haphazardly and rushed toward the hotel entrance, flashing my FEMA credentials to bypass the crowd. Inside the lobby, Mr. Kealoha was coordinating the evacuation with remarkable calm. "FEMA," I announced, approaching him. "What's your status?" "We're at 60% evacuation," he replied. "Buses are taking guests to the emergency shelter at Kona High School. But we're running out of transportation." "More buses are being dispatched," I assured him, repeating information I'd heard over the radio. "What about the upper floors? Are they clear?" "Working our way down. 5th floor should be nearly empty now. My family's floor." I thanked him and sprinted for the stairs, not willing to wait for the overcrowded elevators. The 5th floor hallway was eerily quiet compared to the chaos below. Most doors stood open, rooms hastily abandoned. I reached Suite 512 and found the door locked. I pounded on it, calling out my family's names. After an agonizing moment, the door opened to reveal Taylor, a backpack slung over his shoulder. "Alberta, thank God, they're evacuating the hotel." "I know. Where are Mom and Dad? Jessica?" "Still packing," Taylor said, gesturing inside. They didn't believe it was serious until the emergency alert came through. I pushed past him into the suite. My mother was frantically stuffing clothes into a suitcase, while my father argued with Jessica. "We can't take all your shopping bags, Jess. We need to go now." "I'm not leaving my new dresses behind," Jessica insisted, trying to cram designer shopping bags into a second suitcase. "Stop!" I shouted, my emergency management training taking over. "Leave everything except essentials. Wallet, phone, medications, one change of clothes. That's it. We have less than 30 minutes before lava cuts off the last evacuation route." My mother looked up, startled by my tone. "Alberta, don't be ridiculous. The evacuation is just a precaution." "It's not." I pulled out my phone and showed them the live feed from the monitoring center. The screen displayed a horrifying river of molten lava flowing down the mountainside, consuming everything in its path. "This is happening 5 miles from here, and it's moving fast. We need to go, now." Something in my voice, or the stark reality of the footage, finally broke through. My father zipped up a small bag. "She's right, let's go." Jessica started to protest, but I cut her off. "Jessica, leave the shopping bags or stay with them. Your choice." For a moment, she looked like she might choose the latter, but then she grabbed her purse and a small duffel bag. "Fine." We hurried down the emergency stairs, emerging into the lobby just as another tremor shook the building. A chandelier swayed dangerously overhead, and guests screamed. "This way," I directed, guiding my family toward the exit where I had seen buses loading. Outside, the situation had deteriorated. Only one bus remained, already packed beyond capacity. The line of cars attempting to leave the property stretched out of sight. "Where's your car?" my father asked. "In the emergency lane, but it only seats 5 with the equipment inside." I scanned the area, making a quick decision. "Follow me." As we navigated through the crowd, my FEMA radio crackled to life. "Highway 19 now blocked by lava flow at marker 23. All evacuees must divert to coastal route 4. I swore under my breath. The coastal route would soon be congested beyond movement. We reached my vehicle, and I quickly cleared emergency equipment from the back seat. "Get in. We'll take the service road behind the golf course. It connects to the high ground route." As my family squeezed into the car, Mr. Kealoha rushed toward us. "Miss Walker, the last bus is full, and we still have guests and staff with no transportation." I looked at my family, then back at the desperate hotel manager. The decision crystallized instantly. How many people? About 20. I handed my keys to Taylor. Take the family to the Kona High School shelter. I'll stay and help. My mother's eyes widened. Alberta, no. Come with us. I can't, I said firmly. This is my job. This is what I trained for. I turned to Taylor. You know the route? He nodded, studying the emergency evacuation map I'd left on the dashboard. But how will you get out? I gestured to the hotel's helipad, where an emergency helicopter was landing. I'll find a way. Alberta, my father began, his voice breaking. We can't leave you here. You have to. Go now, before the service road gets cut off too. Jessica, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly grabbed my arm. Be careful, she whispered. I squeezed her hand quickly, then stepped back. Go! As Taylor drove away with my family, I turned to Mr. Kealoha. Get everyone to the helipad. We need to coordinate with that emergency chopper. The helicopter belonged to the Hawaii Civil Defense Agency, its pilot initially reluctant to deviate from his assigned rescue path. But when I explained the situation and showed my FEMA credentials, he agreed to make multiple short hops to ferry people to the nearest safe assembly point. We can take 6 at a time, the pilot shouted over the roar of the rotors. Who's first? I organized the remaining guests and staff, prioritizing elderly and those with medical conditions. As the first group lifted off, I checked my phone for updates. The lava flow had accelerated beyond all projections, now threatening to cut off even the high-ground route within the hour. 2 more helicopter loads departed, leaving 8 people besides myself. The pilot looked grim as he returned for the 4th trip. This has to be the last one. The smoke and ash are getting too thick for safe flying. I did the math quickly. 6 seats, 8 people remaining, plus me. Take the 8, I decided. I'll find another way out. There is no other way out, the pilot argued. All roads are either blocked by lava or gridlocked with evacuees. In that moment, an explosion echoed across the landscape as the volcano entered a new, more violent phase. The ground trembled continuously now. We don't have time to argue, I insisted, helping the last guests aboard. I know this area from my research. There's a maintenance access road that runs along the old lava tubes. I can take one of the resort's utility vehicles. The pilot looked unconvinced, but had no choice as ash began to fall around us. Radio when you're safe, he said, handing me an emergency beacon. Good luck. As the helicopter lifted off, I ran to the resort's maintenance area. As I'd hoped, a rugged utility vehicle with oversized tires sat parked beside the golf cart garage. The keys hung on a board inside the office. Just as I started the engine, my phone rang. Miraculously, a call was getting through. It was Taylor. Alberta, where are you? We made it to the high school, but they're saying the road behind us is cut off now. I'm leaving the resort now, I said, steering the utility vehicle toward the maintenance access gate. Is everyone okay? We're fine, but worried about you. Mom's freaking out. Tell her I'll be fine. I know a back route. I hesitated, then added, Taylor, if I don't make it out. Don't say that, he interrupted. Listen to me. There's a flash drive in my apartment, on my desk. It has all my research, my models. Make sure Patrick Harris at FEMA gets it. You can give it to him yourself, Taylor insisted. Just get out of there. I'll try. I have to go now. I ended the call as I reached the access gate, using the maintenance code Mr. Kealoha had given me to open it. Beyond the gate, the narrow maintenance road wound uphill away from the coast. In the distance, I could see the main lava flow, an incandescent river cutting through the night. The road I was on ran parallel to the flow but on higher ground. If I could stay ahead of the advancing lava, I might reach the emergency assembly point on the north side. I drove as fast as I dared on the rough track, the utility vehicle bouncing violently over ruts and rocks. Ash fell like gray snow, accumulating on the windshield faster than the wipers could clear it. The air grew thick with smoke, making breathing difficult. After 20 minutes of punishing progress, I came to an abrupt stop. A new fissure had opened directly across the road, cutting my escape route with a bubbling line of molten rock. The heat was intense, even from 50 yards away. I reversed quickly, considering my options. The main road below was certainly blocked by now. The only alternative was a narrow hiking trail that led through an old lava tube system I'd studied during my research. It would be passable on foot, but not by vehicle. I grabbed my go bag, the emergency beacon, and a flashlight from the utility vehicle. The hiking trail began about a quarter-mile back, marked by a small wooden sign that had already begun to smolder from the intense heat. As I set off on foot, I activated the emergency beacon and radioed my position to the coordination center. "This is Alberta Walker, FEMA Assessment Team. I'm proceeding on foot through the Kalapana lava tube system, attempting to reach North Assembly Point." The radio crackled with a response, barely audible through the static. "Walker, this is coordination. Those tubes haven't been assessed for stability. Too dangerous." "No choice," I replied. "All other routes cut off. I've studied these formations. They should hold." The lava tube entrance loomed before me, a dark maw in the ashy landscape. I switched on my flashlight and entered the ancient passage, formed centuries ago by earlier flows from the same volcano now threatening the island. Inside, the temperature dropped immediately, the thick rock walls providing insulation from the inferno outside. The tube extended like a subway tunnel, arching overhead and disappearing into darkness. My flashlight beam seemed feeble against the immensity of the black void. I moved forward steadily, recalling the maps I'd studied. This particular tube system stretched for nearly 2 miles, eventually emerging on the northern slope, well away from the current flow path. If I could navigate through without mishap, I would reach safety. The going was difficult. In places, the tube floor was smooth as glass. In others, broken and treacherous with fallen ceiling fragments. Twice, I had to crawl through narrow passages where partial collapses had restricted the opening. After what seemed like hours but was probably less than 40 minutes, I felt a change in the air. A faint breeze carried the scent of vegetation rather than smoke. The exit had to be near. I rounded a bend and saw a glimmer of light ahead. Not daylight, it was still night outside, but the distinct glow of emergency floodlights. The North Assembly Point must be just beyond the tube exit. As I approached the opening, a loud crack echoed through the tube. I froze, pointing my flashlight at the ceiling. Fine dust and small rocks showered down as the ground trembled again. The tube was becoming unstable. I broke into a run, ducking falling debris as I sprinted the final 100 yards to the exit. Just as I reached it, a violent tremor shook the entire system. The ceiling behind me collapsed with a deafening roar, sending a cloud of dust billowing out the entrance. I emerged coughing and gasping into the cool night air, the tube entrance disappearing behind a pile of rubble, had I been a minute slower. Emergency workers spotted me immediately, rushing forward with oxygen and thermal blankets. As they guided me toward a medical tent, I heard someone shouting my name. "Alberta! Alberta!" Through the haze of dust and exhaustion, I saw them, my family pushing through a crowd of evacuees running toward me. My mother reached me first, pulling me into an embrace so tight it almost hurt. "Thank God," she sobbed. "Thank God you're safe." My father enveloped both of us in his arms, while Taylor and Jessica hovered close, their faces streaked with tears and ash. "How did you find me?" I managed to ask, as the medical team tried to lead me toward the triage area. "We heard on the emergency radio that someone was trying to come through the lava tubes," Taylor explained. "I knew it had to be you. Only you would know those were even there," Jessica added, her voice lacking its usual edge. As the medical team insisted on examining me, my family refused to leave my side. In that moment, surrounded by their concern, I felt something I hadn't experienced from them in years. I felt seen. The volcano continued its violent eruption through the night, but from our position at the North Assembly Point, we were safe from the destructive flows. By morning, the first news helicopters were flying over the affected areas, broadcasting images of the devastation to the world. The Royal Kona Resort, where my family had been staying just hours before, was now surrounded by hardened lava fields, completely cut off from ground access. The evacuation I had helped facilitate had gotten everyone out just in time. As we sat together watching the news coverage on a portable TV at the evacuation center, the reporter's voice broke through our exhausted silence. The timely evacuation order, issued hours before standard protocols would normally trigger such measures, has been credited with saving potentially hundreds of lives. Sources within FEMA attribute this early warning to an innovative predictive model developed by recent graduate Alberta Walker, who was coincidentally on the island when the eruption began. 5 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. "That's you," my father said unnecessarily, his voice filled with something that sounded suspiciously like pride. I nodded. too tired to explain further. Jessica reached over and took my hand, an unprecedented gesture from my usually self-centered sister. "You saved our lives, didn't you?" "I was just doing my job," I said quietly. "No," my mother interjected, her voice thick with emotion. "You were being who you've always been, the one who sees what others miss, the one who prepares while others play. We just never appreciated it before." In the harsh fluorescent lights of the evacuation center, surrounded by the evidence of a natural disaster I had predicted but couldn't prevent, I found something I hadn't expected. The recognition I'd stopped hoping for long ago. 3 weeks after the Kilauea eruption, I stood at a podium in the Hawaii State Capitol building, still feeling somewhat surreal about the whole situation. Governor Eleanor Matthews stepped back after placing a medal for exceptional civilian service around my neck, and the crowd erupted in applause. Dr. Alberta Walker's groundbreaking predictive model and quick decision-making during the crisis saved countless lives, the governor announced to the assembled media and officials. Her insistence on early evacuation, despite institutional resistance, prevented what could have been one of the deadliest natural disasters in Hawaiian history. Dr. Walker. The title still felt strange. After the eruption, the university had expedited the final processing of my degree. Patrick Harris stood in the front row, beaming with pride. Beside him, Dr. Foster nodded approvingly. Even more surprisingly, beside them stood my entire family, watching with expressions I had rarely seen directed at me: admiration, respect, and genuine pride. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind. The eruption had made international news, particularly the stories of the dramatic evacuations and narrow escapes. Somehow, local media had gotten hold of the fact that I had evacuated my own family before staying behind to help others, turning what had felt like a straightforward decision into something heroic. National news programs had interviewed me about my predictive model, which was now being studied for implementation in volcanic monitoring systems worldwide. Universities and research institutions had extended job offers. FEMA had officially offered me a position heading a new predictive modeling division. But most meaningful had been the change in my family. After the ceremony, we gathered in a private reception room. My father approached, looking somewhat awkward but determined. "That was quite a speech the governor gave about you," he said, "though she left out the part where you yelled at us to leave our luggage behind." I smiled, remembering the intensity of that moment. I was in emergency management mode. "Thank God you were," my mother said, joining us. "We would have wasted precious time if you hadn't taken charge." Jessica approached, carrying 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to me. "To the family hero," she said, without a trace of sarcasm. "I never thought my middle sister would be the one saving all our lives. I was just applying what I'd learned," I said, uncomfortable with the praise. "No," Taylor interjected. "You were being who you've always been, the responsible one. The one who sees problems before they happen and prepares for them. We just never valued that before." The conversation paused as Patrick Harris approached our group. "Sorry to interrupt the family moment, but I wanted to formally invite Alberta to the recognition ceremony in Washington next month. The president wants to personally thank you for your contribution to disaster management." My father's eyes widened. "The president? Our Alberta?" Patrick smiled. "Your daughter has revolutionized how we approach volcanic eruption prediction. Her model is being integrated into monitoring systems across the Pacific Rim." After Patrick moved on to speak with other officials, Jessica pulled me aside. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" We stepped onto a small balcony overlooking the Capitol grounds. For a long moment, Jessica said nothing, just staring out at the meticulously maintained garden below. "I booked the Hawaii trip deliberately when your graduation was scheduled," she finally admitted, not meeting my eyes. "I saw the announcement in the family chat and I was jealous." "Jealous? Of what?" Jessica turned to face me. "Of you, your accomplishments, your purpose. After my divorce, I felt like such a failure. My marriage was over, my career was stalled, and I was living in our parents' basement. Then here you were, getting a master's degree, being recruited by FEMA." I stared at her in disbelief. "But you've always been the golden child. Mom and Dad drop everything for you." "Because I demand it," Jessica said simply. "I create drama. I make needs known. You never did. You just quietly achieved things on your own, never asking for help or recognition. I asked for you all to be at my graduation, I pointed out. Jessica had the grace to look ashamed. I know. And I deliberately sabotaged it because I couldn't stand watching you succeed when I felt so lost. She took a deep breath. What I'm trying to say is, I'm sorry. And I'm proud of you. And I want to be a better sister. The apology was so unexpected that for a moment I didn't know how to respond. For years I had carried the pain of being the overlooked middle child, the one whose achievements were acknowledged but never celebrated. Now my sister was not only apologizing but admitting to deliberate sabotage out of jealousy. I don't know what to say, I admitted. You don't have to say anything. Just, maybe we can start over? Actually be sisters instead of competitors? I nodded slowly. I'd like that. When we rejoined the reception, my parents were deep in conversation with Dr. Winters, who had flown in for the ceremony. Alberta, your thesis advisor has been telling us about your academic journey, my father said as we approached. I had no idea you'd been publishing research papers throughout your graduate program. 3 of them, Dr. Winters confirmed, all well received in the field. Alberta has been a rising star for years. My mother looked distinctly uncomfortable. We should have known. We should have been paying attention. It's okay, I started to say automatically, but my father raised his hand to stop me. No, it's not okay. We've been terrible parents to you, Alberta. We took your reliability and independence as signs you didn't need our support, when really you deserved our attention just as much as your siblings. More, probably, Taylor added. Since you were actually doing something meaningful while I was bouncing between failed startups. The rawness of their admissions left me speechless. For years, I had imagined confronting my family about their favoritism, forcing them to acknowledge how they had overlooked me. But in my imagination, it had always been dramatic and accusatory. This quiet, sincere recognition was somehow more powerful. A week later, the university held a special ceremony to formally recognize my contribution to volcanic disaster management. My thesis presentation, which my family had missed during the original graduation, was restaged for a packed auditorium of faculty, students, and media. This time, my family sat in the front row. My mother wore a corsage that matched my academic robes. My father recorded the entire presentation on his camera. Jessica and Taylor held a handmade banner that read Dr. Alberta Walker, Volcano Whisperer. It was over the top and slightly embarrassing, but I couldn't help smiling at their enthusiasm. After years of being overlooked, the pendulum had swung dramatically in the other direction. The most significant change came at the first family dinner after our return from Hawaii. As we gathered around my parents' dining table, my father turned to me first. Alberta, what do you think of the job offer from FEMA? Should you take it or consider the research position at Caltech? The simple act of seeking my opinion first, before anyone else's, signaled a seismic shift in family dynamics more powerful than any volcanic eruption. For the first time, I wasn't an afterthought. I was the priority. I'm leaning toward FEMA, I said, still somewhat startled at being asked first. I want to implement the predictive model in real-world situations, not just research settings. That makes sense, my father nodded. You've always been practical. And brave, my mother added. The way you stayed behind at that resort to help others evacuate. Jessica raised her glass. To Alberta, who finally made us see what was right in front of us all along. As everyone clinked glasses, I felt a complex mix of emotions. The validation was sweet, certainly, but more important was the realization that I no longer needed their approval to know my own worth. The crisis had forced them to see me clearly, but it had also shown me my own strength. 2 months later, I stood in my new office at FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C., arranging my credentials on the wall. Director of Predictive Modeling for Natural Disasters. At 28, I was one of the youngest division directors in the agency's history. A knock at my door revealed Patrick Harris, now my direct supervisor. Getting settled in? Almost, I said, gesturing to the boxes still needing unpacking. I wanted to let you know, your family called the front desk. They're in the lobby. I checked my watch, surprised. They're early. Dinner reservation isn't for another hour. Patrick smiled. They said they didn't want to miss a minute of visiting you. Apparently, they're making up for lost time. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, I reflected on how completely my life had transformed in just a few short months, from the invisible middle child to the celebrated family member, from graduate student to agency director, from someone whose graduation wasn't important enough to attend to someone whose family flew across the country just to have dinner with her. The elevator doors opened, and I saw them immediately, my family standing together in the lobby, looking up expectantly. Their faces lit up when they saw me, a chorus of my name rising above the general murmur of the busy government building. As I walked toward them, I realized that the natural disaster that had nearly taken their lives had actually saved something just as precious: our relationship. In the face of crisis, the trivial competitions and old patterns had fallen away, revealing what truly mattered. We had emerged from the crucible of danger as a family transformed, our bonds strengthened rather than destroyed by the pressure. Some things required an eruption to change, and sometimes the most important thing rescued from a disaster isn't just lives, but the connections between them. Have you ever had a moment when a crisis brought your family closer together? Did you ever feel overlooked until something dramatic happened that changed everything? Share your experiences in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with others who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible middle child to recognized hero. And remember that sometimes we find our true worth in the moments when everything else falls apart.